Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I'm going to bring you my April book haul. So, unsurprisingly, the month of April, I acquired a lot of books. But I think for the very first time in a while, I actually have more books from publishers than I do from buying myself, and I believe I actually read more than I purchased this month, technically. We'll get into that later. So this was a actually pretty tame month for me. I only have about 18, technically, books to show you. So as per usual, I will split this into books that I bought myself and books that I received from the publishers. So I think I'm gonna start with books that I bought. I feel like I'm already lying, but this first book I did not actually buy. I found it on the sort of free shelf at work, and it caught my eye because, as you may know, I love this author so much, and I've only ever read his series. I've never read his standalones. So this is The Gods Themselves by Isaac Asimov. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest and say I have no idea what this book is about. I love his Foundation series and I love his Robot series, but I've never really read any of his standalone books, so I thought that I would pick this up and see how it goes. So this apparently takes place in the year 2100, and mankind is settled on a lunar colony. There are aliens from a parallel universe, total destruction of Earth. It sounds very sci-fi. Sounds cool. I believe this was published in 1972, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what his later books are like because, again, I've only read those early books. The next book that I have to show you is from an author who you are probably sick and tired of hearing me talk about, but tough luck, I have two books to show you from her this month. So this is After Atlas by Emma Newman. So I loved Planetfall so much. So much. And that is the very first book in this sort of series of companion novels. They're not a direct series, but they all relate to each other. They all take place in the same universe. This book takes place on Earth rather than in space like Planetfall did, and it follows a police officer named Carlos, and when he was a child, his mother left Earth on Atlas, which is the spaceship in Planetfall that brings them to that planet. So his mother was a member of the crew in Planetfall. So in this book, a sort of cult leader type character ends up killed, and Carlos is at the forefront of that investigation. It turns out there's a lot more to the sort of legend of the Atlas spacecraft than people really know about. I don't know much about this book. I just knew that I really desperately wanted to read it because I loved Planetfall so much. Emma Newman is a new favorite author of mine, and I really wanted to continue on with this series. Next up, we have City of Blades by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the second book in the Divine Cities trilogy. So the very first book is City of Steris, which I read in March and tried to talk about how much I loved it, and really failed. It's one of those books that's incredibly complicated and complex, but it's so fantastic and wonderful. This book follows Mugalesh, who's a character in City of Steris who I absolutely loved. She's the kind of character who's just like so perfect for me. This is following her story after the events of City of Steris rather than Shara, who's the character we followed in City of Steris. It's really tough to talk about sequels without giving away much about the first ones, but I loved City of Steris so much. It's an incredibly well-built world with lots of sort of fantastic things that you don't really see in fantasy very often that he pulled off really well. It has fantastic characters, it's incredibly funny, and his women are especially good. I really love his female characters. I cannot wait to read this book and continue on with this series that I loved so much and get to the last book as well, because the last book follows my favorite character in this series, so I'm really looking forward to this. Next up, we have some slightly daunting science fiction. So I was in Waterstones with Scottish Fiancé, and I was talking about how I read the first book in this series and really loved it, but never really continued on with the series because it's quite complicated and complex. And if you have read this book, you will know exactly what I'm talking about and probably start laughing. So this is the legendary Dune Omnibus. So this contains the first 3 books in the Dune series, which is sometimes called the Dune Trilogy, which I guess can be read as its own trilogy. There's 6 books that Frank Herbert wrote, and then his son continued on. It's quite complicated. But I read Dune about 4 or 5 years ago, and I really enjoyed it, but I had no idea what was going on, which is kind of one of the things that Dune is so famous for. If you think that there are books out there that sort of throw you into the situation and you don't know what's going on, Dune does that to like the nth degree. It's ridiculous. It feels like there's like 300 pages of explanation missing from the beginning of Dune, but somehow it works. It works really, really well. So I've been wanting to continue on with this series for a while and really need to reread Dune in order to do that, so I ended up picking up this edition. This edition contains Dune, Dune Messiah, and Children of Dune. It's an incredibly complicated story, so I'm not going to go into it, but if you know what it's about, you know what it's about. If you don't, it might be one you want to pick up if you're interested in the classics, but it might not be as well. Dune is not for the faint of heart, let's just say that. Next up is one of the most highly anticipated young adult books of this year for me. I was really excited about it when I initially heard about it because I think I have not read anything that features this particular period in history, and it's something that I find really interesting, and I just was all on board as soon as I heard about it. So this is Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young. Sky in the Deep is a Viking novel. How exciting is that? It follows a young woman who is a member of a particular Viking tribe who is at war with another tribe for religious differences and all of that. It's a conflict that goes back many hundreds of years. And as she's on the battlefield one day, she sees her brother, who is long dead, fighting for the other side. So she's trying to figure out why this is happening, what actually happened to him if he's not dead, and why he's fighting for the enemy. There's something about this book that is so compelling to me and so fascinating and interesting. I am just so excited to read this. I know almost nothing about it, but I've heard really good things. Some of my very trusted book blogging friends who have very similar tastes to me have loved this book, and I am so looking forward to this. Because you can't just buy one book when you are pre-ordering books. When I went and got Sky in the Deep, I also picked up this one as well. And it's one that I'm not sure I'm actually gonna like, but it's a book that I have been really wanting to read for a while. It's gonna be one that I either really love or really hate. So we'll go ahead and see. This is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. First things first, let's just get this out of the way. I hate this cover so much. It's pretty horrific. This would turn me off right away from reading it if I saw it in a bookstore. It just doesn't look good. This book features a young woman named Audrey Rose, and Audrey Rose is being groomed to be the perfect Victorian lady, but alas, all she wants to do is study forensic science, as one does in the Victorian times, so she ends up stalking Jack the Ripper. She ends up sort of trying to figure out who this killer is, and this sounds like it's going to be brilliant or it's going to be really, really bad. I've heard things from both sides, again, from reviewers that I really trust who have similar tastes to me. So we'll see. If I end up liking this, there is another book featuring her that's hunting Prince Dracula, and then I think it's Escape from Houdini is coming out soon, and if I don't, then oh well. The next book that I have is where all that technically came from in the very beginning of this video. I am choosing to count this as 1, even though it should count as 7, because it's 7 books in a box set. So, I went to the Harry Potter studio in London earlier this month, as I've said a million times, and I decided to buy all of the Harry Potter paperbacks in a box set. So you can see Goblet of Fire is missing because Scottish Fiancé is actually rereading these books with me, and he is much further ahead than I am. I've only read the first one so far. As I've said a million times, I'm sure you guys are sick and tired of hearing this, Harry Potter was a huge part of my childhood. I was 11 when that first book came out in the US. I grew up with these books. Hermione is my hero in everything in life, and I have never read these as an adult. So I'm really curious to see how my views change, and I'm really worried I'm gonna hate these books, although now that I've read the first one, I was filled with wonder and love and nostalgia, so I can pretty much safely say that I'm not going to hate them. However, that was a big worry. I haven't reread Harry Potter in about 12 years, I think, minus one false start with the first book about 5 years ago. So this is going to be a very interesting experience for me. I am really looking forward to it, but I almost never reread books. I feel like this is kind of a special case. That is it for the books that I bought for myself this month. So now we're gonna do the books that I was sent by publishers. So first of all, just thank you to all of the publicists who sent me these books. I really appreciate it. The first book that I was sent by publishers this month is Before Mars by Emma Newman. I told you, you're gonna be sick of me talking about her, but I love her so, so much. So Before Mars is the next companion book in the Planetfall series. So after Atlas was the second one, this is the third one. So this one takes place on Mars. And this sounds really creepy and fascinating because it is a woman who is sort of at a research station alone on Mars. She's the first person ever to be there. And one day she finds a footprint that is not hers outside of the station. It sounds super creepy and fascinating and amazing. And I am so looking forward to this, unsurprisingly. Next up, we have The Electrical Venus, and this is by Julie Mayhew. This is a historical fiction young adult novel that I'm sure has flavors of fantasy in it as well. I've heard that it's really great for fans of The Night Circus, which is a book that I read ages and ages ago and I'm pretty sure I liked. I might be due for a reread on that one because it's so popular. So this book looks really fascinating, and I'm just going to read the back really quickly because it sums it up better than I could, and it's quite short and it sounds really cool. This sounds like it could be a really interesting, very unique book. It's hard to earn your keep in the filth and thrill of a traveling sideshow in Georgian England, but when Dr. Fox, a gentleman stranger, joins the fair, Mim gets top billing at last as the Electrical Venus. Now each night, men jostle to pay a penny and receive an electrifying kiss from her lips. Is this starring role her true value? Is love worth more than a penny? When love comes, does it feel like a spark? So I don't really know what to expect from this one, but it sounds really fantastic and really fascinating. Julie Mayhew is also going to be at YALC, which is the Young Adult Literature Convention that's held in London at the end of July every year. So this is going on my YALC TBR, and I'm really looking forward to it. So next up, I have 3 books, and if you've seen my Baltic Books unboxing, you've already heard all about these, but I'm just going to go over them really, really briefly. So this is Shadows on the Tundra. This is a memoir. On the Edge of a Sword, and this is a book of poetry. And finally we have 18, which sounds kind of like a thriller. So all of these books are in translation, and translated fiction is something that I just don't read enough of, even though I would really, really like to. I even did my master's dissertation on translated fiction. So I'm really, really looking forward to reading these 3 books. If you want to see more about them, I will link that unboxing below. Now for something completely different, we have the Royal Wedding Coloring book. So this is by Adam Rushton, and although I am not a huge, obsessive about the royals, I think they're fine, especially this younger generation seem to be doing a lot of nice work, so that's all good. But as an American, I need to get behind my girl Meghan, who is getting married, actually quite soon. I think she's getting married sometime this month. Again, I'm not particularly obsessed with the royals, but I cackled my head off when I initially saw this book because it is so, so silly. So this book features a bunch of scenes from Hollywood films with the various royals, particularly Harry and Meghan Markle, and it's one of those wonderful books, I think, that simultaneously kind of pays homage to this couple, but also takes the piss out of this whole sort of ridiculous royal wedding thing that we've got going on here. Just a quick sampling, we've got the famous scene from When Harry Met Sally. We also have, let's see, we've got Harry Potter. This might be my favorite one. I See Posh People. So it's just making fun of the whole thing, but it's also doing it in kind of a cute way. You can color in the Queen and her jewels. My favorite is you can color in the corgis, which of course are the best part of the royal family. And this is just silly goodness. And the thing that I really like about this is that it's not one of those really complex, very beautiful adult coloring books that have those beautiful, very intricate patterns, because those stress me the hell out. I really like the much more simple designs of this. So this is very silly, but also very sweet. Next up, we've got The Testament of Loki, and this is one that I have already talked about in my April reading wrap-up. I received this month, I read it this month, I loved it so much. It's one of my favorite books of the year. So this book comes out, I believe, on the 15th of this month. It's the middle of May, and I highly, highly recommend it. You can read it as a standalone, but I think it's best to read it with The Gospel of Loki, which is the book that came first, even though they can kind of be read as standalones. I've already talked about this book and gushed about it so much in that video, so I'm not going to do that over again. I'll link that video below if you'd like to see it. Next up, I've got a sequel to a book that I haven't read yet, although I own that first book. This is Genesis. This is by Brendan Reichs. So Genesis is the sequel to Nemesis, which I actually bought at Yelk last year. It came very highly recommended by the people running the My Kind of Book stand. So Nemesis is about a young woman who every 2 years on her birthday is murdered by the same man. And she wakes up in a clearing outside of town with sort of no evidence, no wounds, nothing. So I don't know much about Genesis. I've been avoiding reading the back of it, but I've been really wanting to read Nemesis for a while. So these are both books that I'm going to get to really soon. So next up I have something kind of unusual for me. I have 2 unsolicited review copies. So these are books that I did not request and the publisher did not reach out about. They just sort of sent them in the post and they were a bit of a surprise. These are from the same publisher. They're both from Hodder. So the first one is The Dark Net by Benjamin Percy. I believe this is coming out in paperback, which is why there are review copies going out. The back of this says, "The Dark Net is an anonymous online shadowland for criminals, and a demonic force has begun to hack the minds of its users." So it feels very kind of sci-fi horror, which is pretty cool. So next up is You Should Ask Me, and this is by Marianne Kavanagh. This is not science fiction. This sounds like a thriller. Mary is an 86-year-old, but she's tired of being quiet. She has a story to tell, and she's only going to tell it once, so she won't be rushed, especially as it's not a story, it's a confession. So this sounds really cool. I think that thrillers are not something that I always read, but they're something I'm interested in reading more of. So this could be really great, and it has a blurb from Emma Thompson on the front, and if it's the Emma Thompson that I'm thinking of, she's fabulous. So I'll probably end up giving this a shot. So the next 2 books are for an event that I'm going to be chairing in Oxford on the 9th of May. So if you're in the area, I can leave that ticket information below. It should be really, really good. This first one is Whistle in the Dark by Emma Healy. This is one I've actually already read, but I finished it yesterday, which is May 1st, so it's not counting for April. Whistle in the Dark is about a woman named Jen, and while on holiday with her 15-year-old daughter Lana goes missing for 4 days. No one knows what's happened to her. Jen is freaking out, as she should be. Lana reappears, and she has no memory of what happened while she was gone, but she has sort of cuts and bruises and a big sort of wound on her head. It's really up in the air what happened to her, and that's kind of the big mystery of this book. What's really interesting about this book is that it's not about sort of this girl going missing and how are we going to find her, what's going to happen. She's found in the first 10 pages. It's about what happens after she has come back. And the tagline of this book is, "How do you rescue someone who's already been found?" I love this concept so much and I enjoyed this book. So the last book to show you is also a book for this event, and this is my current read. So this is The Half-Sister. This is by Catherine Chanter. The Half-Sister is about 2 women, Diana and Valerie, and they are half-sisters. Diana fled from home at 16. We don't really know why, and Valerie sort of stuck around. So we're at this pivotal point in their lives. Their mother has just passed away, and Diana invites Valerie and her young son to stay in her kind of sprawling country estate. She's married, very wealthy. Valerie is very middle class, I believe. The book opens with a coroner inquest. Valerie has died. There was an earthquake and the part of the house that she was in collapsed and she was caught in the rubble. So this book is kind of about what happened, unraveling their past and sort of working through their relationship. So this is one I'm not very far. I'm like 20 pages in, but I am really enjoying this so far. It's a very fascinating read. So that is it for this month's book haul. I feel like I have no voice left because this and my monthly wrap-up have been very, very long videos. So thank you so much for sticking with me through these. Let me know in the comments below if you have read any of these books, if you would recommend any of these that I haven't read yet, or if you happen to get anything really good in the month of April. If you enjoyed this video, then I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time.